example of affirmative action. Anybody else?
When they took affirmative action in like higher up colleges, like for African Americans.
Yes, and that is what we're going to talk about today. So that's race-based admissions, affirmative action. Do you all understand? The purpose of affirmative action? What's the purpose of it?
To make sure that no one would be separate by like depending on their race or like any of that.
Yes. So it's honestly the purpose is to create a level playing field. So do you know what it means to affirm something or somebody? It's kind of like to acknowledge and to kind of like build up. So if I say, I affirm your existence, I'm acknowledging that you really exist. So affirmative action is kind of like, I recognize the problems that you're facing and I want to do something about it to help you. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So we're going to do a couple vocabulary words that we've been discussing. Do you guys remember what systemic means? No? So systemic means that it's ingrained in society. So there are institutions, laws, policies, sometimes physical structures that are creating disadvantages for people. Can you guys think of an example of that? They're creating disadvantages. Jim Crow laws, that is a really good example. Those were systemic, so they were ingrained in society, and they did create unfair or harmful treatment to people. So systemic racism, as I'm sure you can guess, are policies and practices that existed or exist right now throughout a whole society that result in a continuous unfair advantage to some people and unfair or harmful treatment of others based on race. All right, we good on that one? We talked about systemic disadvantage a little bit. So it is a structure, when structure and culture, so a structure of society and then the culture within society work together to compound or build on top of and reinforce disadvantage to certain groups. Can you guys think of an example of systemic disadvantage that's not related to race? What about homelessness? So the system is kind of working against homeless people. So what do you need to get a job? What are some things you need?
Home address.
Home address. You need a home address. You need reliable transportation, usually a cell phone or access to an email of some kind for giving them contact information. It's really hard for a homeless person to get all those things. So it's hard for them to get out of homelessness, even if they are staying at a shelter. They may not have other resources to get everything they need to get a job. Another example is low-income families. You can be trapped in cycles of poverty for similar reasons, although not quite as extreme. So the institutions are intentionally or unintentionally designed to induce or create generational cycles of poverty. So if parents have children and those children are raised in poverty, it's a lot more likely that they're gonna grow up to be in poverty because their parents were, because they didn't have the resources to maybe get an education, they didn't have enough money to go to college, they didn't have enough money to go to a trade school, things like that. Okay, so we're going to talk about affirmative action for college admissions specifically. Affirmative action in general is the practice of policy of favoring individuals belonging to groups regarded as disadvantaged or subject to discrimination. Subject to just means like you are being discriminated against, so you're subject to discrimination. And from what I understand, you guys have a pretty good understanding of that already. So college admissions, one purpose of it is to increase diversity across campus. So how do you think affirmative action for college admissions based on race